Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Wednesday, February 26th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside will be 87 degrees today with a low of 55, so plan accordingly if you're heading outdoors. Coming up on today's show, we'll examine the significant implications of a mineral agreement between the United States and Ukraine that's changing the landscape of global resource politics. Then, we'll investigate why California communities are still struggling with dry wells, despite experiencing record-breaking rainfall in recent months. And finally, we'll explore how NASA's latest missions to the moon could help scientists discover and potentially utilize lunar water resources. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. In a significant development in U.S.-Ukraine relations, a new agreement is set to give the United States access to Ukraine's valuable mineral deposits. This comes as Ukraine continues to face Russian occupation of many resource-rich territories. Joining us now with more details is our international correspondent, Ethan. Ethan, what can you tell us about this deal?
Grace, this is indeed a major agreement that's expected to be signed in Washington, D.C. by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and U.S. President Donald Trump. According to BBC News, the deal will grant the U.S. access to Ukraine's substantial mineral deposits, which include rare earth minerals crucial for modern technology.
What exactly does Ukraine bring to the table in terms of these mineral resources?
Ukraine possesses quite an impressive portfolio of what are called critical raw materials. According to reporting from BBC News, these include graphite, which is essential for electric vehicle batteries, lithium, another key battery component, titanium used in aerospace, and various rare earth metals that are crucial for everything from advanced weapon systems to wind turbines and electronics. The country also has significant deposits of specialized metals, like tantalum, beryllium, and niobium, that are vital for cutting-edge technologies.
And what's the estimated value of these resources?
That's where things get interesting, Grace. BBC News reports that Ukraine's mineral deposits are estimated to be worth between $350 minus $500 billion. However, as Perplexity analysis indicates, this valuation may be largely speculative. Ukraine itself has made much bolder claims, suggesting mineral resources worth up to $12 trillion. But these figures haven't been independently verified. The Ukrainian Association of Geologists estimates that Ukraine has about 5% of the world's critical minerals resources.
I understand there's a significant challenge with accessing these resources. Can you explain that situation?
Absolutely. The major complication here is that approximately half of Ukraine's rare earth element reserves are currently under Russian occupation. According to Perplexity analysis, this includes areas in the Donbas region that are particularly rich in lithium. BBC News estimates that Russian-occupied territories contain mineral deposits worth around $350 billion, including a large percentage of coal mines, manganese, cesium, tantalum, and rare earth deposits. CNN reports that Russia continues its attacks on Ukraine, with recent airstrikes causing casualties, further complicating access to these resources.
What are the financial arrangements in this deal? I recall there was some controversy about compensation for U.S. wartime assistance.
You're right about that controversy, Grace. According to CNN, a previous contentious proposal for the U.S. to receive $500 billion in profits from these resources as compensation for wartime assistance has been dropped. Instead, the U.S. and Ukraine will have joint ownership of an investment fund, with Ukraine contributing 50% of future proceeds from state-owned resources. BBC News reports that this investment fund will be directed toward Ukraine's reconstruction and will be managed jointly by Kyiv and Washington.
Has Ukraine secured the security guarantees it was seeking as part of this deal?
That remains a sticking point. According to BBC News, while the agreement includes U.S. support for Ukraine's security efforts, firm security guarantees have not been given. Perplexity analysis confirms that the recent agreement between the United States and Ukraine regarding mineral resources does not explicitly include security guarantees from the U.S. as initially sought by Ukraine. This is particularly concerning for Ukraine, given that so many valuable mineral deposits are in contested territories.
What's driving U.S. interest in this partnership?
As BBC News reports, the U.S. interest is largely strategic. It's about reducing dependence on China, which currently controls a large percentage of the world's rare earth deposits. These minerals are essential for everything from smartphones to military equipment. Interestingly, BBC News also reports that Vladimir Putin has proposed a potential partnership with the U.S. to access Russia's rare minerals, including those in occupied Ukrainian territories, adding another layer of complexity to the situation.
Thank you, Ethan, for that comprehensive breakdown of this developing story. We'll continue to follow this as the agreement moves toward finalization.
You're welcome, Grace. It's worth noting that this deal comes after some tension between Trump and Zelensky, with Trump recently calling Zelensky a dictator, according to BBC News. Ukraine clearly hopes that giving the U.S. a financial stake in its mineral wealth will provide additional motivation for American support going forward.
Our next story takes us to California, where despite recent wet years, thousands of wells remain dry. Joining us to explain this complex water crisis is our environmental reporter, Chloe Bennett. Chloe, this seems counterintuitive. Why aren't wet years solving California's groundwater problems?
Grace, it's a puzzling situation that highlights a much deeper issue. According to a comprehensive report from Cal Matters published yesterday, even with abundant rainfall and snowpack in recent years, groundwater recovery is painfully slow, especially in the San Joaquin Valley, California's agricultural heartland. Many wells in low-income rural communities remain dry, forcing thousands of residents to rely on bottled water or invest in deeper, more expensive wells.
What's causing this persistent problem despite the increased precipitation?
The primary culprit is decades of overpumping, particularly by agricultural operations. As Cal Matters puts it, even wet years only briefly pause the depletion of wells. According to Perplexity API analysis, agriculture accounts for the majority of groundwater consumption in California, especially during drought periods when surface water becomes scarce. The Central Valley's agricultural industry creates an unsustainable demand on underground aquifers that temporary rainfall surges simply can't replenish quickly enough.
I understand California passed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act back in 2014. Hasn't that made a difference?
There has been organizational progress, Grace. Perplexity API's February 2025 analysis shows that over 250 local groundwater sustainability agencies have formed, and approximately 120 groundwater sustainability plans have been submitted, covering about 98% of California's groundwater use. However, the effectiveness varies considerably. 73 plans have been approved, but 13 are incomplete and 6 were deemed inadequate, triggering state intervention.
Beyond policy, what about infrastructure? Is California capturing enough water when it does rain?
That's another major bottleneck. The Lompoc record reports that millions of acre-feet of stormwater escape to the ocean annually because the state lacks adequate pumps, pipelines, and recharge ponds. Some farmers, like Don Cameron highlighted in the Cal Matters article, have built their own canals and recharge basins. But these individual efforts aren't enough, and many landowners hesitate to invest without guarantees they'll benefit from the water they help store.
What about the environmental impact of all this groundwater pumping?
It's severe, Grace. Overpumping has caused significant land subsidence in the San Joaquin Valley. Literally, the earth is collapsing by several feet in some areas. This damages infrastructure like canals and bridges, while permanently reducing the capacity of aquifers to store water in the future. And when solutions like capturing more surface water are proposed, environmental advocates raise concerns about reduced river flows and potential harm to endangered fish species in the delta.
Has there been any progress in recharging these depleted aquifers?
There has been some. According to Perplexity API, California added 4.1 million acre-feet of water to underground aquifers through managed recharge efforts in 2023. Governor Newsom has invested millions in groundwater solutions and signed executive orders to remove barriers to water diversion for storage. However, Cal Matters reports that a 2023 program to divert water for recharge resulted in only a fraction of the intended amount due to permit delays and costly requirements.
What solutions are experts proposing for this crisis?
The most controversial solution cited by Cal Matters is permanently fallowing large areas of cropland to reduce agricultural demand. Some irrigation agencies have developed accounting systems to credit farmers who contribute to groundwater recharge. The state is also considering major infrastructure projects like the Delta Tunnel to boost water deliveries to the Central Valley. But these solutions face significant political, environmental, and financial hurdles.
Thank you, Chloe, for that detailed explanation of California's ongoing groundwater challenges. It's clear this is a complex issue that won't be solved overnight, even with favorable weather conditions. Here are some other headlines. The White House has announced a major shift in its media strategy, stating it will now determine which news outlets can cover President Trump. This change breaks from the century-old tradition, where an independent pool of journalists covers presidential activities. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt described this as modernization to include streaming services and social media influencers alongside traditional outlets. Critics argue this raises serious First Amendment concerns by allowing the president to select which journalists cover him. The decision comes amid a federal lawsuit filed by the Associated Press over restricted access after refusing to use the term Gulf of America instead of Gulf of Mexico as directed by Trump. Microsoft employees staged a protest during a company town hall meeting where CEO Satya Nadella was speaking. 5 workers wore t-shirts that spelled out, "Does our code kill kids, Satya?" before being escorted out. The protest followed an Associated Press investigation revealing Microsoft's AI models were used by the Israeli military to select bombing targets in Gaza and Lebanon, including an errant 2023 airstrike that killed 3 young girls and their grandmother. Microsoft stated it provides avenues for all voices, but requires this be done without disrupting operations. This follows October incidents, where Microsoft fired 2 employees for organizing an unauthorized vigil for Palestinian refugees. Elon Musk's satellite company Starlink appears positioned to take over a $2 billion contract to modernize the nation's air traffic communication system. Starlink equipment has already been installed in Federal Aviation Administration facilities, raising questions about potential conflicts of interest given Musk's role as a senior White House advisor to President Trump. Experts have expressed concern about the lack of transparency in the process, and former FAA officials warn about integrating Starlink without adequate testing and review of its benefits and drawbacks for critical aviation systems. North Korea has reopened its doors to international travelers for the first time since closing its borders in January 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The country initially allowed Russian tourists to visit in January 2024, with more than 200 Russians visiting Pyongyang and Rason by March. North Korea plans to expand tourism to include Western visitors in the second half of 2024, starting with the city of Samgyeopsal, known for winter sports facilities. Tourism remains tightly controlled, with visitors required to register with authorities and restricted from interacting with locals without authorization. U.S. District Judge Amir H. Ali has ordered the Trump administration to release billions in blocked foreign aid within 2 days. The ruling follows President Trump's January executive order that paused foreign assistance obligations for 90 days and issued stop work orders for existing projects. Judge Ali initially issued a temporary restraining order on February 13, requiring restoration of funding, later clarifying that the government must cease its blanket suspension of congressionally appropriated aid. The judge noted, the funding cutoff is causing irreparable harm to organizations, leading to layoffs and halted projects. The State Department and USAID have appealed the order. Our next story takes us to the frontiers of space exploration. NASA is making another bold step in its lunar ambitions today, with the launch of 2 probes designed to search for water on the moon. Joining us with more details is our science correspondent, Ethan. Ethan, tell us about today's launch.
Thanks, Grace. Today marks a pivotal moment for lunar exploration, as 2 specialized spacecraft, the Lunar Trailblazer Orbiter and the Athena Landera, are scheduled to blast off from Cape Canaveral, Florida. According to NPR, the launch window opens at 7:16 p.m. Eastern Time aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket.
What exactly will these spacecraft be looking for on the moon?
They're primarily searching for water, Grace. As reported by WLRH, both spacecraft have distinct but complementary roles in this quest. The Lunar Trailblazer, which is roughly the size of a dishwasher, will orbit the moon to study the abundance, form, and distribution of water from above. It will specifically determine whether detected water exists as molecular water, water ice, or hydroxyl compounds.
And why is finding water on the moon so important?
According to reporting from Voice of Alexandria, Water is absolutely crucial for future human exploration and potential settlement on the moon. It could be processed into breathable oxygen and rocket fuel, dramatically reducing the resources we'd need to transport from Earth. As Perplexity API notes, understanding lunar water will also help scientists unravel the origins of water on the moon and potentially provide insights into Earth's own water cycle.
I understand there's something unique about who will be operating the Lunar Trailblazer mission.
That's right, Grace. One of the most fascinating aspects highlighted by both NPR and WLRH is that the Lunar Trailblazer will be operated primarily by students at Caltech. The orbiter will take several months to reach its desired 60-mile polar lunar orbit, where it will make 12 orbits daily to observe the moon at various times and conditions.
Now let's talk about the Athena lander. This isn't Intuitive Machines' first attempt at a lunar landing, is it?
No, it's actually their second attempt. Their previous mission, IM-1 Odysseus, reached the moon in February 2024, just about a year ago, but encountered problems during landing and tipped over. According to Perplexity API, that mission faced several challenges, including a laser rangefinder failure after skipping a pre-flight test, a higher-than-intended descent velocity, and software issues related to a last-minute patch.
Have they made improvements for this mission?
They certainly have. While the specific engineering changes to address the tipping issue aren't fully detailed in available reports, Perplexity API notes that the new lander features a lighter composite pressure vessel tank that's nearly 10 pounds lighter than its predecessor. The company has also applied operational lessons from the previous mission to improve control during transit and enhance their global communications network.
Where exactly will Athena be landing, and what will it be doing there?
According to WLRH, Athena will attempt to land on Mons Mouton, a flat-top mountain near the lunar South Pole. This will happen after a 3 to 4 day journey and a few days orbiting the moon. The lander is carrying several fascinating instruments, including a drill and spectrometer to look for subsurface water, a rover to test a 4G communications network developed by Nokia, and even a device called the Hopper, a rocket pack designed to hop into unexplored craters.
How does this mission fit into NASA's broader lunar plans?
This mission is a significant step in NASA's Artemis program, which aims to establish a sustainable human presence on the moon. The high-resolution maps provided by Lunar Trailblazer will guide future missions, while Athena's ground-based exploration will provide direct data about subsurface water resources near the lunar South Pole, an area of particular interest for potential human landing sites.
Thank you, Ethan, for that fascinating look at today's lunar mission. We'll be watching closely to see if the launch proceeds as scheduled and how these missions unfold in the coming months.
My pleasure, Grace. This is definitely one to watch, especially given the previous challenges Intuitive Machines faced with their lander.
That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 3.7, Gemini Flash 2.0, the Perplexity API, and the Google Cloud Text-to-Speech API. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.